Westworld Season 4 Episode 4 has just released on HBO Max, and in this episode we get a big twist surrounding Caleb and a much clearer picture of Season 4's overall timeline. In this spoiler review and explained analysis, I'm going to be giving you my breakdown of Westworld Season 4 Episode 4 entitled Generation Loss, alongside discussing my general thoughts towards it. But before I get into it, if you want to see more videos on Season 4 of Westworld, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. Also, feel free to check me out on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Instagram at Cortex Videos, which is all linked in the description below. But without further ado, let's dive into my review and explained video for Westworld Season 4 Episode 4. So in Westworld Season 4 Episode 4, we get plenty of action, mystery, and twisty time jumps that really start to give us some important answers. In particular, the episode, which is titled Generation Loss, gives us a better idea of why Caleb is important to Halores, yet by using its other narratives that involve Bernard and Christina, it's able to identify the time period that we are watching all of this unfold in, and bring all the narratives together. At the end of episode 3, Caleb and Maeve had walked straight into the trap of Halores, with the former encountering a host copy of his daughter Frankie, and now it would seem that he would be controlled by those creepy flies that seem to be infecting the humans. So where does Caleb go from here, and what do we learn in episode 4 that furthers where we left him and Maeve last week? Well, some big things are teased right from the get-go. We come to Maeve and Caleb in a different setting on a completely different mission. And like I was theorizing in my episode 4 predictions video last week, we do indeed get a flashback scene with them as they appear to be storming the lighthouse that has been mentioned in previous episodes. They attack a beach compound, rigging a building that houses one of Sirach's last Rehoboam devices. They take out the henchmen inside, the compound explodes, but on the way out, Caleb gets shot by one of the remaining men. Maeve deals with him and has to drag Caleb to the shoreline and attempts to stop the bleeding. Caleb, however, doesn't seem to be recovering too well, and we are sure to learn more about how this developed later on in the episode. Westworld is of course a show about the narrative loops we live in, and seeing this flashback reflected to Maeve and Caleb's mission in the 1920s park just hints at the obvious reveals to come. And not to mention that both Caleb and Maeve's stories are ones centrally focused on their love for their daughters. It's the idea of two different beings mirroring each other, yet one previous narrative reflecting a new one, soon to be shockingly revealed as we move through this latest episode. But before we can get any answers towards what this means for the future, Caleb awakes following his fly attack at the end of last week, and Halores is there with him. She tells Caleb that she plans to use the flies to infect and then control his kind, and that he's the next to receive that treatment. At the time, we know that she must be doing this for an extra reason, or something else is going on, as it would be too much of an elaborate plan to simply suck Caleb in when he could just receive a similar treatment to everyone else. Or if she really wanted him out of the equation, she could just terminate him there. But of course, those answers soon begin to unravel. And while Caleb is dealing with Halores, Maeve realizes that she has encountered a host version of the Man in Black. She battles him once again and escapes by hacking into the park's computer system, triggering a musical blast from that tower-like device we previously saw, and it knocks him down. This disruption breaks the glass around the facility, causing Caleb and Halores to be knocked to the ground too, and by using the disruption, Caleb holds Halores at knife point with a shard of broken glass. He commands her to get the flies out of his system, but unfortunately, Halores refuses. Once Maeve catches back up with them, they try to escape the park with Halores as a prisoner, and once again, we hear that music that commands the fly control. The controlled humans in the park start open firing on the hosts, and Caleb and Maeve are caught in all the chaos. And with the flies beginning to take control over Caleb, he grabs a gun from the ground that was dropped by one of the firing hosts and aims it at Maeve. It's key to note that he was not fully infected at this point, but with the control getting stronger, it gives him and Maeve a limited amount of time to do what they've came here for. We'll come to that shortly, but it's clear that Caleb is struggling to stay conscious. In the midst of aiming that gun at Maeve, Caleb is stabbed by a host before he can pull the trigger. Maeve saves him and they escape the park in a laundry vehicle that's actually being used to smuggle illegal moonshine. Basically, another narrative that Maeve recollects while at this particular park. And we follow this with more flashbacks to that earlier scene, getting the first of our main reveals. Caleb didn't die on that beach, and Maeve stayed by his side while he recovered. And while in the hospital, she saw the life that he could have had with his family and decided to leave him at that moment until the day came where they would meet again. She explains to Caleb that she went into hiding to keep him safe, hence her memory reflection in the cabin back in episode 1, where we saw brief flashes of the lighthouse and her history in the previous seasons. Yes, she relates to Caleb and his connection to his daughter, showing that compassion, but she also put him back in danger by using her powers to try and find out where he was and if he was living the life of freedom she wanted for him. And that's how Hell eventually found them. We do get bigger answers as the episode progresses, but first, let's check in with some of the smaller narrative points surrounding Christina and Bernard that will soon become much bigger than we already know. Starting with Christina, we start to get a sense that she will soon be breaking out of her loop, with her oversleeping and her normal waking up shots being disrupted as her roommate Maya wakes her. Maya begins to tell her about a strange dream she had, which involved flies ruining her family's picnic, and she states that they took over her mother, her father, and then eventually her. Maya also finds Christina's painting with that mysterious tower painted over it in her room too. So while there's still more to come on this, what we know is that Maya is now someone who seems to be under this same structure of control that we are increasingly learning more about. I did predict this in my episode 4 trailer breakdown video because, like we see in this scene, Maya does seem shocked and recollects what appears to be a real memory. She could still turn out to be another obstacle or a host to keep Christina on her loop, but right now everything seems to be pointing in the opposite direction. But as this narrative continues, Maya convinces Christina to go out and try to eliminate some of the stress they've been facing. We learn later that night that Christina's new date is Teddy, who we last saw outside her apartment at the end of episode 1. We get the retelling of Teddy picking up the can of beans that she drops, with this time it being lipstick. He even repeats his line from Westworld, and then they proceed to talk with each other, discussing their normal lives, before Dolores questions if they actually know each other. So at this point, we have to wonder not where Christina is, but when this is and who she is. It's clearly taking place after the shock twist at the end of this episode, but with the question of who she is, it muddles things even more. We're left to wonder why this familiar character and her familiar love interest are repeating loops in this new world. And is Teddy a way out, or just another obstacle to keep Christina stuck in the loop of reality she's found herself in? A reality controlled by that reoccurring tower. Could she be one of the Dolores pearls from season 3 rebooted into this new world for a particular reason? We'll have to see, but the shocking ending of this episode does start to eliminate a few of the theories we previously had, and it gets us closer to where we might be going. But before we get to that, we come back to Bernard's narrative, and this one also involves a few reveals to make us regather our thoughts on the whole timeline of this story. Bernard, Stubbs and their new resistance begin their search for the weapon that Bernard talked about in the previous episode. There's initially a conflict between the groups surrounding whether or not Bernard and Stubbs are to be trusted, and it leads to Stubbs having to be separated from Bernard and going off with Daniel Wu's new character. So Stubbs won't have the knowledge that Bernard has to help him through upcoming situations, and he will need to try and make the right choices along the way. But Bernard does suggest that they are still currently on the right path and the right things are happening. So that's good news for the time being. But Bernard goes off with Aurora Perrigneu's new character, now called C, to find this particular weapon, and she reveals to him that she actually wants to find the body of her father instead of the weapon they are searching for. And this soon means that those theories about her being Caleb's daughter Frankie were bang on the money. She is Caleb's grown-up daughter, but we still question what is the weapon they are digging for, what happened to Caleb, and what does this mean for the war of the future going forward? Well, this is all about to be answered. During the ending scenes of episode 4, it gives us some big reveals about how all of these previously mentioned plot points relate. Maeve and Caleb come across a construction site that appears to be staging the work on a new park. But what goes on there between Caleb, Maeve and Halores is the important event at this particular moment. Host Man in Black follows them to this location, and Maeve agrees to buy them some time and fight him off so that Caleb can contact his friends to get them out of the park with Halores in tow. However, the flies begin to take effect on Caleb, and after a few minutes, he can only hear Halores talking to him. She talks about her control and tells Caleb to shoot Maeve. Caleb does overcome this thought and shoots Host Man in Black instead. Halores asks him how he was able to break her control, but this distraction gives Host William the time to recover, shoot Maeve and stab her with a knife, reflecting those Westworld events once again in the real world. Maeve stays fighting though and remotely activates explosions on the site, with the explosion burying her and Host Man in Black in the process too. But back over at the construction control room, things take a turn with Caleb and Halores. Caleb begins to lose his sense of reality and asks Halores where he is, with her reply setting up the biggest timeline twist in the show yet. She replies, "The question you should be asking isn't where, but when." And she asks him this because it turns out that this is a process of her conducting an interview to establish a baseline for fidelity. We saw this happen with the Man in Black in the season 2 post-credit scene, and while we're still unsure of who was doing that test, what we know here is that Caleb's consciousness was put into a host body in the future. And Caleb realizes this when he looks down at his bullet wound, shocked to see it isn't there anymore. The location around him changes, and he's now in a building that's a part of the New York cityscape that Halores is in control of. He asks who he is, and Halores replies, "Well, you're certainly a version of you. I believe the 278th. So Caleb died in that park 23 years ago, and in the time since, her mind control flies have worked. But we do learn of a certain flaw. They worked on adults to begin with, but their developed minds were struggling to change. So Halores began infecting the children and letting the parasite grow as they developed in her world. She says, "It took a generation for those children to mature, for me to gain complete control of your world." And this would relate to what Maya was telling Christina earlier on in the episode, when she talked about her parents being taken by the flies and her being taken afterwards. So right now, we're guessing that this happens around the same time. But back to Caleb, after finding out that the world has been taken over by Halores and that he actually died, he eventually storms storms out of the facility and starts to run around the streets of this dystopian New York cityscape. He finds himself running out of the Olympiad Entertainment building where Christina works, and in the distance, he spots the giant tower that's being used to control humanity. He bumps into someone on his panic run, and Halores uses the tower to freeze the humans around him, with Caleb understanding clearly what has now happened. He tells her defeatedly that she's won, and Halores creepingly replies, "Welcome to my world." Two men take Caleb away, and I presume we will learn more about why Halores has used him for a fidelity test, and where this leads in the future concerning human William and his eventual test that we saw in the season 2 post-credit scene. What we do know is that it's to do with Halores knowing that Dolores and Maeve were so interested in Caleb. She wants to see what all the fuss is about, and she may soon be learning about that and using him for something we do not know yet. And what we also know is that the humans are under her control, with adult outliers being a small problem that she has to get around. It's all compelling stuff, and this episode's twist really brought me back to the thrilling turn of events that we saw in season 1. But this info also solved the mystery about what Bernard and grown-up Frankie were actually digging for. Of course, she believed it was her dad, but Bernard says, "Caleb isn't here, the weapon I promised you is." Buried in the sand is in fact Maeve's body, revealing that the Delos construction site where Maeve and Host Man in Black were presumably buried is this location, and that Bernard's timeline is indeed way into the future. With season 4 starting at the year 2060 and Halores stating that it's been 23 years since Caleb died, it would mean that this is all taking place around 2083. And this means that once Maeve is revived, the 2083 narrative is where she'll come back and try to restore free will to humanity. While we haven't had a complete confirmation of when Christina's narrative is taking place, based on the reveal of Caleb as a host and him being in the same futurescape, we can also expect that this is either around the same time or slightly after. We'll have to see, but expect all of the central characters coming together in a hopefully thrilling second half to season 4, with the war for freedom about to truly begin. So what are my overall thoughts of this latest episode? Well, with Generation Loss, I think we have a top 10 episode of Westworld. It's an episode that brings clarity to the timelines involved in this season and carries forward a powerful narrative arc with Caleb. He had quite a weak arc in season 3, but within the first 4 episodes of season 4, the show has made me care about this character and through him, the future of humanity. By doing so, the plot twist feels earned and isn't just used for shock value. You actually feel emotion for Caleb because of everything he's been through, yet you still have questions about what's next for him. Aaron Paul delivers his best performance of the show, showing every sign of confusion, struggle and weakness from the control he's under. You see every facial expression and deep-rooted pain that this character feels, and his performance has to be applauded for that. However, a lot of the praise has to be given to director Paul Cameron, who has put this together perfectly. Right from the last scenes in the Golden Age Park, to the practical action staged in the Delos construction area, to the establishing shots of this new world that has become a prison for humanity. It's all given a sense of scale, and the overarching narrative that this episode reveals combines with the filmmaking brilliantly. Cameron and the actors deliver on the big plot twist, sucking you back into Westworld, and they potentially drag this show back to the form it once had in the first 2 seasons. I can't wait to see what's in store, and I hope the last 4 episodes can really bring this level of television to really echo the message. The message that Westworld has returned in a big way. But that was my spoiler review and explained analysis for Westworld Season 4 Episode 4. I'm giving it a rating of 9 out of 10. I will be doing a trailer breakdown, predictions, and theories video for episode 5 in the next few days, so keep a lookout for that and stay tuned to my channel each week for breakdowns on every episode of season 4. But to those who have already seen the episode, what are your thoughts on all the events that went down, and what do you think will happen in episode 5? Let me know down below in the comment section. For more videos on every episode of Westworld Season 4, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.